Well, this certainly hasn't been what I expected. Hello, and welcome back to the Infinite Inkwell, or welcome to the Infinite Inkwell. I'm Lewis, and I'm on a journey of discovering different ways to tell stories. At the moment, I'm trying to make a video game so I can tell a nice basic story. I've recently outlined the 4 different ways that I was going to try out game development and pick my engine, and I am starting with Godot learning GDScript. I've spent about 8 hours with Godot. It's not just the time with Godot, but also learning about it. And this has been the thing that's been quite interesting. I wanted to start with something quite basic when it came to Godot. I didn't want to jump into a tutorial, I didn't want to go and buy a course or do something like that. I thought I would start with the documentation. It's something that I've heard people say is go pick up the documentation and have a read and see how far you get. And when you struggle, then go back and try something else. So I spent a good couple of hours with the documentation. I was reading through it, I was trying to understand how things flowed, and I had a lot more trouble with the documentation than I expected. Now, I've heard very good things up until now about the documentation that exists for Godot and a lot of the resources that are out there to help you go through it. But I actually found it quite challenging in places where, whilst it was quite clear around how some of the concepts work, and I think that was the biggest challenge initially, was understanding the concepts of Godot and how things were structured. That was kind of okay. But then when I got into some of the detail, there seemed to be some stuff that just kind of overlapped and even contradicted itself, and I started to get lost. I wanted to only learn what I needed to have to learn to be able to build something, which kind of seems fair. I didn't really want to go down and just get really heavily into coding and just learn about the code without being able to use any of it practically. So my approach has been, I'm going to read some stuff, I'm going to learn some stuff, and then go away and start building. I'm going to learn what I need. I'm not going to go away and learn everything. This was actually one of the challenges that I had with a lot of the Godot documentation, is that it says, hey, do you know anything about coding? No? Okay, here's some courses to go learn some computer science. Go learn how to code in a few languages and then come back. Then we can have a conversation. I actually really didn't like that. It feels like it doesn't want you to use it unless you know what you're doing. Unless you already have this deep computer science and coding background. I don't think that's fair. I think your documentation should be good enough to make it accessible for everybody. It should be easy enough for me to pick it up the same way it is to pick up a piece of IKEA furniture, right? I can pick up the instruction manual, read it, and understand what to do. Some of the stuff in the Godot documentation really wasn't that easy to pick up. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed. Nothing was going to stop me learning how to use Godot and its native GDScript. Even though the documentation that exists wasn't great, I went off in search of something else. This is what took me to GDQuest. GDQuest was actually recommended by the community at large, but also Godot on their website does talk a lot about check out GDQuest for a lot of this material. I went over to YouTube and I started going through some of their content. GDQuest was actually pretty decent. I watched some of their original kind of shorter introductory videos talking more about the engine broadly when I was doing my research for the different game engines I could use. So I knew they were good and they knew what they were talking about. So from there, I went to their YouTube channel and I checked out their content. I actually started with one of their short courses around how to build a Vampire Survivor-esque game. So I thought there's lots of elements in here that will teach me some of the basics. There was a lot there that I could pick up and reuse. So I started with their content. And to be honest, initially I thought it was pretty good. But then as I started to go through it and I started to build out some of the pieces using the files they provided, I'm in this place, I've learned this stuff and felt the need to go, this is as much as I can get from here. I actually want to go and learn this stuff now. At that point, I decided to go somewhere else to learn that next feature or piece of functionality. So I went to YouTube and had a look and found DevWorm and started to pick up the next piece I wanted. The challenge that I had here was that when I was doing their stuff around the tile map and kind of the basic level creation, some of that was really good, but then I found that some of the things that I'd already done with GDQuest didn't work quite the same way. So the files that GDQuest had already provided me with turns out they were spoon feeding me a lot of stuff and I didn't have to do every element of the level creation or game creation that I would expect to do in a normal game. This is actually a bit of a problem because when you're building something from scratch by yourself, you need to be able to go away and understand this is what you did and how you got there. or how this problem was caused, or why this didn't work. Because GDQuest spoon-fed a lot of stuff to you and provided a lot of those files, it actually had the impact of taking a lot of that knowledge away from you, and you could fail if you didn't stick to their guidelines quite strictly. Going into this, I knew that my learning style actually is more conducive to having a teacher that I can converse with, that I can ask questions to as we go through the learning process. Now, I don't have that learning everything online. So what I've started to do instead is take meticulous notes and explain things to myself in writing, how certain bits work, how certain code is constructed, some of the basics, so between scenes and nodes, and how that stuff works. I've had to document it so I can go back to it and make sure I understand it. So that's how I've been doing this, which is why I spent 4 hours just in GDQuest and Godot Documentation. I'm very aware that that's a long time to spend doing that work, to get to a point where I'd already done so much and then found myself being held back by what I'd already learned was actually pretty soul destroying. To realize that the stuff that I'd already picked up and had been working on was not the best way of doing it. It wasn't the best way I could have learned how to build something. Yes, I had built something, but it wasn't all mine. It wasn't all my creation. And I don't mean the sprites and the artwork. I mean the actual code, the functionality of the game wasn't all mine. So I took a moment. And in this moment, I went over and had another look at the stuff that DevWorm had created in his own Creating a Vampire Survivor clone course. The way that they explained it all and the way that they broke down every single element and made you write the scripts for basic stuff, for things that you would need later, were things that I hadn't done before in some of the stuff that GDQuest had provided. So I started again. And that was hard. I'm not going to lie to you. I really started to lose it after I realized how much work I'd already put in that was only partially useful going forward. I was angry that I hadn't looked and checked myself before I moved forward. I walked away from my machine, made my peace with it, and came back. And now I have spent 4 hours in the first 3 parts of DevWorm's Building a Vampire Survivor clone course. Now, I'm not looking to build the full course, I just want to build some of the basics, and there's actually some elements here that I'm going to put on pause and come back to later, because if I end up using GDScript and Godot, I really want to pick up some of the stuff that's in this course, because it includes things like inventory management, which I think is going to be quite important when I start making my own game. I will say that the notes that I've taken have been more extensive this time. I have been really meticulous in making sure that the notes that I have, I can go back and read and understand. And in fact, I spent a lot of time watching the videos and taking meticulous notes, and then putting them to a side and not watching the video and starting to build separately. Building separately while not having those moment to moment, oh, do this, then do that, actually forced me to try and remember what I'd learned, which is kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure I remembered what I'd learned so that later on I don't need to constantly refer to other documentation. But I'll be honest, I've had mixed results. In fact, I'm going to show you. So here we go. This is my code to date, really. So this has been based on all of my learning from DevWorm and what I've been doing. This is probably not everything. I had to get to a point where I put a pen in it and wanted to film this video. By the time that this is out, I'll have done a little bit more and fixed some stuff, because yes, I have broken things and I don't know what those things are yet. I don't know how to fix them, but I have broken things, but I'm working on it. This is what I've built out. This is using the assets that they provided. So the trees, the walls, the grass, the pathways, the river, this is all here. You can see that there's a full map here that I've started to flesh out. And in the middle, we have my little player character. On the left-hand side, we can see the scene, which is the world with the player in it, and the tile map, which is, of course, the level map. We have another tab here, which is actually just my player. All of the separate nodes that make up that player. So you can see you've got the camera, the collision zone, and the player animation. Some basic stuff in the script. This is not perfect. Do not criticize. You can criticize, but as I said, it's coming along. I work with developers in a non-technical way for my job, and I've noticed that they do this in their code, but for larger chunks to explain what stuff does. So I've started doing it in my code because I actually think it's just good practice. So I can understand, oh look, like this one, these are my directional controls, which I've just realized I can't spell. There we go, live fixing. In fact, no, I still can't spell. directional controls. There we go. So now I can see and understand exactly what some of this is, which is great. But yeah, so I've written some code, I've built my world. What I can also do is show you the game. Our little character moves around. The animation's not right, but it moves around. And weirdly, the controller didn't map correctly either. And I don't know why. But you know what does work? The camera pans with the character, and there are borders to this map. And it recognizes the borders. So if you can see, if I go this way, the map stops moving. Sorry, the camera stops moving. That's it. It knows that that's the boundary, and that's great. So this is a big step forward. I can move something around on the screen. The camera goes with the character, and the map starts to expose itself as I move around it. Now, the thing that I didn't show you, I mentioned, but I haven't shown you fully, is what you can see, but you can't see on screen. For some reason, my up, down, left, right, my WASD is not working the way that I've mapped it. So for some reason, W is left, S is right, D is down, and A is up, and I have no idea why. I have not mapped it this way. I have gone through this multiple times, and I do not understand. And it is driving me nuts. So I need to fix this, but it's been fun playing around seeing what I can do. And now for some transparency, just to show that the whole time I spent with GDQuest wasn't a waste, but I did learn something and build something even though it was really rough. I'm going to show you that. You can see I've got some trees. These trees actually have collision zones. The player has collision zones. There's a very rough background. We have a player character called Boo with some different elements too. So if we have a look at some scripts here, we can see that there's walking animations, some overlapping, some issues with code. So here we go. This is what I built in Godot with GDQuest. You can see my little character moves around. You can see that he's walked into a tree, can't go around the tree. Oh, wait, he can go behind the tree. And you can come in front of the tree. See, there's little cool stuff that I was able to do with GDQuest. But as I said, I got frustrated. I didn't feel like it was open enough in telling me what it was doing. So I stopped. But I did achieve something. That's where I've got to so far. And I'm going to continue until I have finished a level. I want some stuff that I can pick up, so some collectibles. In fact, the DevWorm one comes with something that's quite nice, an interactive object. So you can walk up to a tree, knock it for an apple, and then pick up the apple. That is going to be a good start for me so that I can start to learn some of the basics. And once I've got that level created, I'm going to evaluate it and put it to one side. Then I'll move on to Godot with C++, which I feel is going to be way harder than GDScript has been just because it's C++, which is an advanced language. And I am a little afraid.
You will be. You will be.
I'll be honest, I think that could be a mistake. I think, and from some of the comments that I've seen on my last video, people suggesting going to look at C# might be a better idea. But I'm going to test out C++ and see where it goes from here. But that's not until I finished this damn level. And when I do finish the level, I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk to you about some of the challenges I had while doing it and some of the things that I learned and stuff that was useful and what I would do. In fact, I've already learned so much about what I would do if I were to pick this up again from knowing nothing. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken away from it so far is the resources that you use are gonna be so crucial in defining how successful you may be based on your learning style and how you retain information. And that's something that I haven't really spoken about. And how you learn is super important while doing something like this for the first time. I'm already in a bunch of Discords that I'm going to start interacting with a little bit more to help me solve some of the problems that I'm facing, but it's not the same as a teacher. But I'm sure actually will probably be more useful than a teacher because of the range of experience. And I'm looking forward to having some more of that input from others as I go through this journey. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope it's been useful and that you've learned something. Maybe discovered something about how you might want to approach Godot for the first time. the different resources you might want to consider before picking it up. I'm going to share all of the resources that I've used while learning about Godot down in the description. So if you want to go away and start going through it or preparing to learn about how to build a game in Godot, you'll have the same resources that I used. So I hope that helps. If you did like this video, hitting that like button would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to see how far I get with this and what sort of stuff I can do, hit subscribe. It'd be great to have you along with the journey. Not just for this part of the learning of how to build a game, but the full game I intend to make. Come along for the ride. I hope you'll have a great time. Thank you so much for your support and comments and likes, and I've really enjoyed engaging with some of you down in the comment section. It's been great, so thank you, and I hope we can continue having some of these conversations as we move forward. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.